Hi everyone and welcome to the LEC preview of the second week of the 2022 LEC Summer Split. As usual, I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts on the teams before heading into the weekend, and then I'll be doing some predictions as to how the matchup might go. But before that, as promised, I have started another LEC Super Fantasy lobby, which you can join in the description below. It's EU over NA is the name of it, and I'll be showing you which 10 players at this point in time are in the top 10 of that lobby, just to give them some props for participating. So let's pull them up here. Number one is Alitas on fire with 573 points, Cosmic Burrito then 530 points, King Tiger 85 at 504 points, Holden 123 501 points, Hot Mill Ale Gambe for 198 points, TR 478 points, Sir Lagarto or Senior Lagarto 472, If Slm 462 points, and one Bobby 460 points in 9th place, and in 10th place at this point is Lucky Reed with 459 points. So some names that you might recognize from previous editions of the LEC Super Fantasy that are competing consistently in my lobby. You might ask, Tom, where are you? Well, I'm dwelling in mediocrity, so don't pay too much attention to that, but I'm hellbent on my revenge arc with this weekend and the future ones. Still, if you want to join in the link in the description below. It's fun to compete. I personally like it just as a fun side thing. But without further ado, let's hide this one. And we are going to go into the standings first, because I'm going to be talking about each team and how I expect them to do in the weekend. So G2 is at the top with 3-0. I think that for this team is very important. This is a momentum-based team. They've said so in the past. We've seen so in the past how much momentum can influence their performance. The lower bracket run in the spring playoffs, continuing into MSI, but also when they failed at MSI, a downwards momentum. So I think having this 3-0 start is very good for them, especially with wins against Excel and Rogue, which are two teams that seem at least to be competing with G2 for those top regions. Well, Rogue not just there yet, but I'll get to them in a bit. But I expect them to pick it up. So I think for G2, those are very good wins to get early on, and I expect them to carry that momentum in further weeks. Now, there's going to be some point where other teams might catch them a bit off guard, or G2 might int a little bit, because it's still G2. They will also still in some games. But overall, I'm very positive about G2 at this point. Then we have Excel, also at 2-1. I think they were very strong in the opening weekend. Clearly seem to have taken some good lessons from their boot camp. The overall team dynamic is much more solid. I think this is a team that's pretty comfortably going to reach playoffs this time around, which is crazy to say 1 year ago. Overall, pretty strong. I do think that their approach to the game is pretty streamlined, but in a league where not every team is comfortable with the meta yet, and not every team is comfortable with their team yet, I think playing around Patrick is a very viable strategy, because he's very good. So I don't think Excel is going to drop off anytime soon, but what I would like to see future on is seeing them try some different things if possible. Fnatic, also at 2-1, lost their game against Excel, the direct competitor. I think Fnatic overall has a better start to this split, as I also said in Best in the West with Veteran, than last split, because even though they went 3-0 there, I think their gameplay was very shaky, and I think this time, even though some of their gameplay was still very shaky, I did also see minor improvements compared to the start from the spring split. This team overall has a lot to figure out in terms of how they want to play together, in my opinion. But I do expect them to get there as the split progresses, and as they find a way to do more together with a team. Similar to Excel, they are pretty streamlined in how they want to play, but they are very good. Their bot lane is probably the best bot lane in Europe if they find their synergy right. And I think that is something that as a team they need to figure out a bit more, but then they'll be rolling well. So I expect Fnatic to come online from about week 4 onward, and until then just find their place a bit more. Astralis is also 2-1. Now it has to be said their 2 victories were against Misfits and BDS, the 2 teams that are sitting in 0-3, but still already at 2 of the 3 wins they had last spring. So they should be reaching more wins this time around. I think the thing for me with Astralis is, are they going to be able to throw curveballs at the higher tier opponents in the LEC? And are they going to be able to keep finding how they are going to be, how to improve as a team? That is something I doubt when they're up against better teams. Mad Lions at 2-1 should have gone 3-0, but they threw their game against Rogue, as I discussed with an interview with El Yoya, which you can find on my channel here as well. I think Mad Lions looks completely different from spring. They are much more coherent. They seem to know what they want to do in the game. There are there's obvious cleanup to do as for every team. There's not a single team that plays cleanly, but Mad Lions is up there with one of the cleanest teams in the LEC at this point. It's only 1 week. We'll see how it plays out, but I do think that they have found at least the stable footing that they were so desperately searching for in the spring split. Vitality 2-1. With wins against Misfits and BDS as well, so the 2 worst teams, and then against Mad Lions they lost. I need to see more of this Vitality. I think individual skills obviously there, but as a team, I'm not impressed so far yet. Rogue went 0-1 against Fnatic, obviously, and G2, so the 2 old kings, the old titans, so they went 0-2 against them. Then did manage to pick up a pretty surprising win against Mad Lions, because they were supposed to lose that game, but then managed to steal an Elder Drake, win 1 fight, and win the entire game, which was pretty ridiculous. I think people were pretty harsh on Rogue based on week 1. I obviously was also disappointed in Rogue's performance in week 1, but overall I do think that this is a team that just thrives when they figure out the meta, as I also iterated on Best in the West, and I think that is something that Rogue just hasn't done yet, but we have seen that this coaching staff and the Rogue lineup can pivot in new metas. They did so, I think it was 2020, where they dropped to the lower bracket of the LEC after being defeated by Fnatic, and then they turned it around and switched. Basically, they adopted Fnatic strategies, used them themselves, and made the pivot. Now, obviously, this is a lineup with completely different players aside from Larsen, but there's still the coaching staff with Freddy. So I think if those two can get the team together and say, like, okay, this is how we approach it, then they also have a lot of experience in other players now on the team, with, for example, Odo Amne. I do think that this is a team that can quickly make a pivot and find out what the meta is, play to that, and once again start abusing that. So I do think Rogue is going to bounce back very quickly. SK Game is also 1-2. Could have gone 0-3 just as much. They played against BDS in that 44-minute long terrible game. I think SK Gaming hasn't shown a lot of improvement compared to Spring Split. I'm not sure if there's much more room for improvement compared to Spring Split. Looking at individuals, I would say so, because Genax has been a solid top laner in the past. We've seen Treats play well. I think Gilius, when he's in shape, like during the Schalke Milko run, he is somebody who can lead the team and get them to victory. So I think for SK Gaming, it's about finding their shape, and then they're a team that might climb to, like a 7th, 8th position. But based on the first week, I wasn't very impressed yet. Misfits, 0-3, very disheartening result for them, obviously, after finishing in 4th place in the Spring Split, and in the regular portion even finishing in 3rd place. So with Misfits, I think it's all about mental at this point. They lost against Astralis, which is a terrible team to lose against if you want to contest for playoffs. Excel, and against Vitality. And Vitality is also a team that you want to win against if you want to contest for playoffs later on in the split. I think this team just needs to completely wipe week 1 out of their memory and just say, like, okay, we completely fumbled it. Let's head into week 2. And I wonder if they have the mental to do that. I also think that as a team, they need to realize that maybe they need to play a bit more conservatively, and that now these comeback mechanics aren't in the game anymore. They need to find a different way to close out games, because if you remember in the Spring Split, there's so many games that they should have lost, but then pulled off a crazy comeback and won, which was very impressive and very good. But that's just not something you going to be able to do anymore at this point in the game because of the durability patch. There are new champions that just don't allow you to pull off the same things anymore. So Misfits need to find its new niche in the meta, find a new strategy. Maybe it's around playing bot lane a bit more. You have a very solid bot laner with Neon. Maybe it is again focusing on Veteo. It is a possibility. Or maybe alternating between these two. But I do think that they just need to reset after week 1. Say, okay, well, that happened. We're just going to approach week 2 like it is week 1 and make the best of it again. And the BDS in last place, they probably looked like the worst team out of all the teams in week 1. I did an interview with Grabs on Invent Global where he said, it seemed like all the progress that we made in spring is just completely gone again. Now, obviously, they do have 2 new players, so that might need some time to find their spot and kick off the progress again. And maybe the line of progress will be a bit steeper early on, which leads them to an overall, I guess, higher floor from week 2 onwards, once those players have found their place. But with BDS, the problem is just a lot of fundamentals are not there for this team. They're not understanding of the map. So I'm wondering how quickly they are going to be able to pick that up, if they're going to be able to pick it up at all. But so far, it's not a very good look, obviously, for this lineup. Now it's time to get into predictions. And we start day 1 with SK versus Astralis, so 2 teams that last split were at the bottom, but now Astralis is, they kicked off with 2 wins, and SK was not looking very well. I do think Astralis is going to win this one, actually, because I think in these early stages, SK just still needs some more time to figure out what they want to do, and in this chaos, it is that veterans can thrive based on, just having the solid fundamentals nailed down. As a team, I expect them to be on a bit higher level than SK Gaming. I don't think it's going to be a particularly exciting match, aside from maybe if we see a crazy pick from one of the players. But I do think that Astralis is going to edge this one out. Then we have Excel versus Vitality. I expect Excel to win this. They've looked like the more coherent team. They play much more in line with each other than Vitality. The Vitality, if they're going to be able to find a win, it's going to probably be off the back of some like insane individual performance, or maybe 2 people who pop off, and Excel can't overcome that the lead that these carries have accrued. But I do think that Excel should be able to play this by the book and play this one out. Misfits versus Rogue. I expect Rogue to win this. As I said, I do think that they're going to be able to bounce back from the 1-2 week pretty quickly with adjusting their meta read. And Misfits are going to take, on the pure team-based level, Rogue is still way ahead of Misfits in my opinion. G2 versus BDS. Don't think I need to elaborate much more about why I think G2 is going to win this, even though this would be a typical G2 fashion to then lose this game, obviously, but I think this is going to be a pretty solid victory for them. And Fnatic versus Mad Lions. It's the old mid laners against each other, which is very fun because if you remember, I go back to last year, Humanoid was on Mad Lions and Niski was on Fnatic in the Summer Split. Now they've swapped teams. I expect Mad Lions to come out on top because I think in terms of team fundamentals, they have a better understanding of what they want to do in the game. Fnatic is still trying to find out in this meta how this team should function. And as I said, I expect them to pick that up a bit later on in the split. And then we go to for Friday, actually. Saturday. Wow. It is hot in Berlin. Stay hydrated, kids. On Saturday, I think SK versus Misfits is also not going to be a very pretty game. It's going to be interesting to see who wins this. It's a pretty coin flippy game for me because I think if Misfits has been able to reset their mental and come into the second week with adaptations and with the improvements, just, okay, this is how, like, everything went wrong. This is how we should play in this meta, or like just try this completely different strategy. I think Misfits should be able to win that against SK Gaming. But if they haven't, I think SK Gaming will win, because if Misfits isn't going to make the adaptations, they fall prey to teams that at least to some degree can close out messy fights. And we saw SK do that against BDS, where they punished mistakes, even though it was barely, and even though BDS should have won the game, SK could have won it. Overall, I do think Misfits is gonna win this game, but it's probably not gonna be a very pretty game. Mad Lions vs Excel is actually a super exciting game because those two teams look hot heading into the summer split. No pun intended. Very tough to say. If I look at individual lanes, I think Finn should be better than Armut. Elyoya should be better than Marcoon. Then we have Niski and Nukeduck, who both have this more supportive role for their teams. But I do think Nukeduck has a bit of a wider champion pool if he wants to play the carry, so that might be an angle for Excel. And then I look at the bot lane. I think Patrick and Mickey are a fantastic bot lane duo in terms of individual power, so Excel should be able to win that. So if I put all things together and also how these teams play together, I think Excel is going to win this, but this one is going to be a very close one, in my opinion, with a lot of attention on the macro and the team decisions that are made, because I think in the laning, it's not going to be too exciting, but I think when we see the fights around objectives, it's going to be okay. Which team has a better setup? Which team has a better draft to make team fights work? I think that's going to be like the most important part in this game. Rogue versus Astralis. I expect Rogue to win this. You might say, oh, but you know, Rogue's 1 and 2, they look terrible. Again, I do think that Rogue is going to be able to make a pivot. If I'm proven wrong, I'd be very disappointed, and the Best in the West episode should be very nice. I might go on a little rant about Rogue then, but we'll see about that. For Astralis, yeah, as I said, their wins were against the bad opponents in the LEC, and I don't really think that this is something they're going to keep up in a match against Rogue, where pound for pound, I think all players are better in their respective roles compared to their counterparts. Maybe if they give Jonghoon Pike again as a Rogue, then Astralis can have another weird pop-off performance. But other than that, I expect Rogue to win. BDS versus Fnatic, I expect Fnatic to win this, even though they have some work to do in terms of teamwork. They're way further ahead in understanding the game than BDS. And we close out with Vitality versus G2. Perks versus G2 again, as the LEC promo showed. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying poo because you might think it's an easy G2 win. I am going to say that G2 is going to win this, but I was more thinking about how is Vitality going to win against G2. Well, it might be G2 going for a fun draft and it not working out, but I do think that against a team like Vitality, they want to prove that super teams are not a thing in Europe, and that Vitality is still worse than G2 as they were in the spring split. So I think G2 is gonna go all, how do you say that, like full gear, is that an expression, like in 6th gear against Vitality, and really try to beat them into the ground to make a statement. And I just don't think that Vitality's level of team play is able to keep up with what G2 wants to do, even though G2's play is pretty telegraphed, mostly playing around the top side, but they do that super well and they're very aggressive, and I don't think Vitality is a team that can withstand that on a team level. So those are my predictions for this week in the LEC Summer Split. Let me know in the comments below who you think is going to win, if you agree with some of the predictions or not, what matches you are looking forward to. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll be doing an interview again from the LEC studio, where I'll be all weekend. Oh, and I've also heard some people ask, hey, would you want, is it okay if I come say hi to you? Absolutely. If you see me walking around in between games where I don't have to pay attention to what's happening on screen, feel free to say hi. I'm happy to chat for a little bit. And other than that, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for more content.